Thorndike's behaviorism theory. Edward E. Thorndike, born 31st August 1874 in U.S., American psychologist, subjects of study, law of effect, law of exercise, law of readiness. Law of effect: any behavior that is followed by pleasant consequences is likely to be repeated, and any behavior followed by unpleasant consequences is likely to be stopped.
Law of effect explains that children acquire high motivation in learning after get to know the effects that they will be receiving if they undergo the learning process well. The effect does help in building motivation for learning. This law works when satisfaction is received by the children after learning process occur and upon receiving the rewards. However, the readiness from the children somehow play an important role, as when they are not ready for the learning, either by getting them rewards or punishment is meaningless for them.
Law of exercise: the more frequently a stimulus and response are associated with each other, the more likely the particular response will follow the stimulus.
Most parents and teachers look forward to this phase as they are able to discover the intensity of the children's understanding of learning, and opportunities of space and time are given to the children to go through the learning process well. The repetition process does occur multiple times and it is time-consuming, as it is to ensure the children can master the learning well. Thorndike formulates this law with the proverb, "Practice makes perfect," in which the children go through all the exercises in learning until achieve the success. However, few particular children that do not receive satisfaction along the repetition process of learning may not be able to improve in their learning. Hence, purpose of reinforcement, which is rewards and punishments, is to get the children having satisfaction after the learning process that they are going through.
Law of readiness: the relationship between stimulus and response is strengthened based on the subject's readiness to learn.
Law of readiness is where the desire of the children to involve in learning depends on their own state or conditions, which is physically and mentally prepared, that need to be fulfilled. For physically prepared, the children do not happen to be unwell, such as feeling sick, fatigue, chills, or overheating physical state. Meanwhile, for the psychologically prepared, they find that the children do not feel pressured with their learning environment or situation. Process of learning will become successful when the children are readily prepared. In addition, forcing the children to learn from a young age predict that the children will losing interest in learning in the future. Behaviorism theory. It can be defined with an understanding of the formation of habits or routines through patterns of conditioning, which is stimulus, connection, which is response, and reinforcement, in which individual learning is based on their own self, the response from their environment, and reinforcement from their learning outcomes. Knight believes learning occurs through experiments, trial, and error. According to the articles that I had to refer, there are 4 learning principles to instill interest in reading among young children. First, form habits in which the teacher establishes rules in the classroom where children able to follow routines by daily, such as learning new words every morning during their cycle time. Second, be careful of forming habits that will not be followed, in which it may be quite hard and impossible to make it as a routine for young children to do it daily to build interest in reading among young children. Third, do not form other habits or rules or routines when the previous one is unable to perform well. This is to avoid incompetence to happen frequently due to keep changing the rules in the classroom and no fixed rules able to be followed by the children in the classroom. Lastly, when the habit or rules is formed, the teacher must ensure that the children know when, where, and how the rule will be used.
He would place a cat inside a puzzle box. This box was designed so that the cat could escape through a door by some simple acts such as pulling at a loop of cord, pressing the lever, or stepping on the platform. For example, one box contained a lever that when pressed would open a door in the side of the box. Once the door had been opened, the cat could dart out and run over to a bowl of food. Most cats wanted to escape as soon as they were placed inside the box. They would poke their nose into the corners, stick their paws through openings, and claw at loose objects. After a few minutes of exploration, the cat could happen to press the magical lever. The door would open and they would escape. Moving on to the examples of Thorndike's learning theory. First is, if you study hard and then get a good grade on a test, you will be more likely to study for the next exam. Second, if you train hard for a swim meet and win the first place, making it more likely you will train just as hard for the next meet. Last, if you practice your act for a talent show, then the audience give you standing ovation, making it more likely you need to practice hard. Moving on to the behavioral perspective of Edward Lee Thorndike's theory of behaviorism, which proposed that humans and animals acquire behavior through the association of stimuli and response. Regarding this theory, there are three majors in law of learning, which are law of readiness, law of exercise, and law of effect. As for this law of readiness, an example that we can see is Ani and Nana are classmates. Ani has been doing a lot of exercises of all subjects throughout the school holidays. Meanwhile, Nana plays with her dolls and plays at the playground all day throughout the school holidays. When school starts, Ani is excited to go to school and ready to learn. Meanwhile, Nana seems to be sad and crying on her way to school as she is thinking about wanting to play with her dolls at the playground. In such cases, teachers can inspire children to do an activity by telling them why they should learn or what they will find after doing the activity. As per this law of exercise, the example is where Hadi found himself weak in mathematics. From that, he took the initiative to start to study mathematics more by doing mathematics exercises as soon as he got home with the help from his mother and repeat this process over and over again. With that, mathematics has become easier and easier for him, as well as he got a better result in that subject at school.
Meanwhile, if he doesn't study mathematics after he gets home from school and repeats it, it becomes harder for him to understand mathematics and get a poor result.
Here, going home is a stimulus and studying is the response. From this case, parents and teachers can help guide children and motivate them to practice more, suitable with the quote saying that practice makes perfect. Followed by this third law, which is the law of effect, where the closest example is when teacher Amani prepares a reward of star-shaped stickers for the activity. All of her students are excited to do it. Thus, her students want to do it again and again. But when teacher Amani didn't offer any reward after finishing the activity, her students didn't feel excited to participate in the activity. In this case, teachers can prepare different kinds of rewards, starting from giving praise, hugging, high five,
to giving a small gift to children. Now, let's have a look at how Thorndike's behaviorism theory is important. The construction of theory must result in the importance that can be beneficial to the individual. Following from that, this importance include helps us to understand how humans are affected by associated stimuli, rewards, and punishments. The effects of stimuli, rewards, and punishments will improve children's learning process and eventually lead to success. For example, children learn some skills through the learning process, such as sitting, standing, walking, and running. Next important is it helps strengthen the association by exercise repeatedly. This is because habits are formed as a result of repetition. With the help of this theory, the wrong habits of the children can be modified, while the good habits are strengthened. For example, teachers can control the negative emotions of the children, such as anger, jealousy, and others. Followed by, educators are able to develop structured curriculum by using certain standards in the learning process which must be reached by the learner. The teacher can improve their teaching methods by making use of this theory. They must observe the effects of their teaching methods on the student and should not hesitate to make necessary changes in them if required. For example, teachers can prepare tasks that start from the easier aspects toward its difficult side to help weak children in learning. Following from its importance, this theory also has its own criticisms and limitations. Among them is that this theory of behaviorism may oversimplify the complexity of human learning. This is because in this theory, the student is not an agent in the learning process, but rather an animal that instinctively reacts to the environment. Plus, it does not really try to understand or explain in depth of human learning. Apart from that, this theory ignores internal cognitive processes. Without the desire to understand the reason behind the behavior is not understood in a deeper context and reduces learning to the stimulus-response model. The behavior is observed, but the underlying cognitive processes that cause the behavior are not understood. This includes the thoughts, emotions, conscious state, social interactions, prior knowledge, past experiences, and moral code of the student are not taken into account. Last but not least, learning is only defined as a change in observable behavior. Many believe that the purpose of learning and education is much more than teaching everyone to conform to a specific set of behaviors. But this behaviorism theory focuses on behavior alone, which does not achieve the purpose of education because humans are more than just their behavior.
Thorndike's theory outlines one way people learn, and we can see it in action in many situations. As for the example, Sarah is a student who rarely speaks up in the class even when she knows the answer to the teacher's questions. One day, the teacher asks a question that no one else answers, so Sarah tentatively raises her hands and gives the correct answer. Teacher commends Sarah for her response and it makes Sarah feel so good. So, next time, Sarah is in class and she knows the answer to a question that the teacher asks. Sarah raises her hand again with the expectation that after answering correctly, she will once again experience teacher's praise. In the other word, because Sarah responds in the situation lead to a positive outcome, the likelihood that she will repeat the response increases. As for the conclusion, Thorndike states that responses that produce a satisfying effect in a particular situation become more likely to occur again in that situation, and responses that produce a discomforting effect become less likely to occur again in that situation.
As a conclusion, Thorndike theory is based on a stimulus-response basis. A neutral bond would establish between stimulus and response when the response are positive. Learning takes place when the bonds are formed into patterns of behaviors. Overall, Thorndike theory is a trial and error theory of learning. There are three laws of learning, which is law of readiness, law of exercise, and law of effect. Law of effect is basically based on the emotional reaction and motivation of a student. Law of exercise is where things most often repeated, which are best to be remembered. While law of readiness is where individuals learn best when they are physically, mentally, and emotionally ready to learn. Therefore, it is believed that through constant repetition of reinforcement, the connection between stimuli and response can be strengthened.